Hello and welcome, Earth. Welcome aboard the Silverwind. I am Captain Tom, and I am joined with our co-host and producer, intergalactic robot friend, Wilson, and we are going to be covering Genesis chapter 30 today, which is some peak Bible family drama. So this will be a lot of fun to cover. So with that, we're actually going to go to one of the moons we haven't been to yet. So for Uranus. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see here. I'll make sure we don't fly into it. That'll be very nice. P. Johnson, ready to take off? Absolutely. This guy, welcome. Let's do this. Dan Yoder, let's go. Captain Tom, heck yeah. And Lisa, yeah, ready as we'll ever be. So let's, yeah, here we go. Making sure crazy stuff doesn't happen here, as it sometimes does. Okay. Yeah, here we go. All right. So this is Oberon, and as far as moons go, it's one of those that we actually don't have a lot of information on. So as much as I would like, let's see here. Let's see if the cameras are working. Yeah, this will get me out of the way of it. Okay. You know what? This is pretty loud, isn't it? Let's go ahead and turn this down a little bit. Yeah. So, Oberon, what can we say about this moon? It is the second largest moon of Uranus. It's about the fourth moon away from it, in orbit around it. It has a mountain that's about 6 kilometers high. And aside from that, it's got a ton of craters. Similar to one of the other moons on Uranus, but not the other one. So it's actually really varies on which moons have either a lot of craters or very few. This one has a lot. Aside from that, NASA hasn't been able to really pick up too much on it. I think the Voyager 2 is the only thing that's actually gotten any data on it. So yeah, maybe in the future we will have some more to share about Oberon. Where is Oberon? It is orbiting Uranus. Oberon, the other side of Uranus. There we go. Da-dunch. All right, that's some peak puns right there. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I also put the settings to where on YouTube it would give a closer reaction time between what you guys post in the chat and this. It says that it does it at the cost of some quality, so just let me know if the quality is like really bad or is really noticeable. If so, I can switch it back on the next stream. So yeah, just let me know how that goes. With that said, let's go ahead. We're going to jump into Genesis chapter 30. Like I said, there's really not much to talk about this. It's really pretty though, so it'll be a nice little backdrop for our story. So yeah, with that, let's get into Genesis chapter 30, and we'll do that in the reading room. So I'll see you guys over there. All right, Wilson, let's hit that transition. Yeah. All right. Easy day. So let me make sure we don't need that music anymore. Perfect. Okay. So if we have, let's do a little bit of review here. Make sure I've got my notes ready. So we have a story with Jacob, and essentially, him building his family. So in the last chapter, it was about Jacob trying to marry Rachel, worked for Labon, a really long time. I'm pretty sure was it 12 years? I want to make sure I get that right because, let's see here. Let me double check that fact real quick. Let's look back at this agreement. You know what? Okay, I kind of missed that detail a little bit. That's all right. Well, I'm sure it'll come up again here in a second in our read right here. So worked for a long time. I don't think it was 12 years, actually. I think it was closer to like 7 or 8 or something like that. But worked for a long time. And he's able to finally marry Rachel, but Laban tricks him into marrying his older, as the Bible kind of describes, more plain daughter, Leah. And so he ends up being tricked into marrying Leah, gets very upset, but he agrees to stay married to Leah so long as he gets Rachel at the end of that wedding week. Lots of, I'm sure, drama and emotions tied up in all of that. Laban gets what he wants, out of the whole deal. And then, of course, by marrying off both of his daughters. And so, now we're in this kind of awkward situation where Leah is, unloved by her husband, but she is having lots of kids. So she's getting all these kids, giving them names related to her anguish in regards to wanting her husband's approval or love. And then we have Rachel, who has Jacob's love, but she's not having any kids. So it seems like everyone's kind of in a distressful situation. So this chapter is going to get into even more details on some of this, we'll say drama, if you will. So if you ever needed a reason, if you're out there and you needed a reason to not marry, two women who happen to be sisters of one another, this will be a pretty good chapter on a reason not to do that. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. First, I want to say one thing real quick. One thing to kind of keep in mind here is that God is working through this story. And so one of the things that God is setting up is he's going to set up a nation to himself, and there are going to be 12 tribes of that nation. So how is he going to do this, and what's the significance of 12? The significance of the number 12 is kind of completeness. It represents God's governance. There's a lot of numerology and kind of the meaning of numbers in the Bible. Sometimes the number references are just for that meaning. Sometimes they're quite literal. So with this case, we're going to have 12 tribes of Israel, which is intentional. That is going to represent kind of a wholeness and completeness of God's governance. And how are we going to get there? It's going to be through, God working with a lot of messy stuff that people are doing. So let's see here. Jacob worked for Laban for a total of 20 years, 7 years. Here we go. Yep. 7 years for Rachel, another 7 years for Rachel, 6 years for the flock. Jacob eventually left after 20 years. Thank you for that. That is some really good context for this. As we jump into the reading here. So that's a long time to work for someone. And just so you know, Laban doesn't just trick Jacob this one time. Laban's kind of a bad dude. He's just trying to take advantage of Jacob as much as he can. And what we've seen from Jacob is that he's very willing to work really hard and to pull his weight around, with everything going on. So, when he immediately comes to the scene, there's a bunch of lazy shepherds, and he immediately takes to action, to try and take care of his family, take care of Rachel, take care of Laban. And all Laban tends to do is just take advantage of Jacob. So we're going to see we're going to see some interaction between Jacob and Laban on that issue as well. So let's go ahead. I think we've stalled enough. We'll go ahead and jump into the reading. I'm going to read 1 through 4. So we'll go over to, we'll switch over here and we'll make that happen. All right. When Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. She pleaded with Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Then Jacob became furious with Rachel. "Am I God?" he asked. "He's the one who has kept you from having children." Then Rachel told him, "Take my maid Bilhah and sleep with her. She will bear children for me, and through her I can have family too." So Rachel gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, and he slept with her. Okay, I guess that's the end of the sentence. And he slept with her. There we go. Okay. So dysfunction leading to more dysfunction, but this was actually a custom that was practiced in that day. It was very common for people to do this if a wife was not able to, have children. That was seen as not only a disgrace for her in that social sense, but there was a really literal sense of, not being able to be taken care of as you get older. Back in the day, in these times, they didn't have social security systems or things that would, take care of them in their older age. If you want to be taken care of in your older age, you would need to have children, right? And so those kids would end up taking care of you. So there was a real survival component to, or a threat to survival when you don't have kids, right? Unless you're involved in a community that's also going to take care of you. But in this situation, she's, basically trying to do this out of jealousy with her sister, because it's not that they don't have kids in the family to take care of them when they get older. This is all about a competition with her sister, and she feels, very bitter about this. Even to the point where she's demanding a child from Jacob, and Jacob's response is pretty clear that he's been trying, but he's like, I'm not God. I can't make that. I can't make that happen beyond what I'm already doing. So, let's see here. The first 7, he was tricked with Leah. Absolutely, he was. So let's go ahead. Let's see here. What else do we have on this one right here? All right. So the practice of having a servant stand in, if you guys remember Hagar, this was something that was done at that time. And when Abraham, when that whole thing happened, I keep wanting to say Rachel, it wasn't Rachel. Abraham and I can't remember. Let's see here. Wow, that name has escaped me real quick. Sarah, there we go, because it's Sarai. So, and Abraham and Sarah would end up trying to do this. They did this because they were trying to speed up God's plan, right? Yeah, Sarah, yeah, absolutely. And it's actually Sarai at the time. So Abram and Sarai, but yeah, her name gets changed to Sarah. They were trying to speed up God's plan, right? So God didn't tell them to do this. He said he was going to bless them with children. And they said, well, we're going to try and, make God's, essentially prophecy fulfilled. That wasn't their place to do that. That was kind of a bad thing, and some bad things happened because of that. In this situation, God hasn't promised anything. They're not trying to do anything other than essentially compete with their sister and trying to just have kids. So following the customs of their time. Keep in mind, Labon is not someone who necessarily worships or fears Abraham's God. We'll see more of this later on in the story. He's practicing paganism, which means that his daughters were also brought up in these pagan practices. So this for them is just kind of the normal way of doing things. So very weird for us, but that was custom at the time. So all right, so let's see here. We're gonna go ahead and move forward from there. Let's see. All right, so we have let's just go through 5 through 6. So we're gonna go through a few more kids that are getting born. So let's just jump right into that. All right, so here we go. Bilhah became pregnant and presented him with a son. Rachel named him Dan, for she said, God has vindicated me. He has heard my request and given me a son. All right. So all of these names have meanings behind them. Dan, so this means judgment, right? And somebody notes right here, says because of her own envy, she viewed this child born, the flesh, as a victory and a vindication for her. So, so this is, child Dan, meaning judgment. So in one stark difference between when Rachel is naming children versus Leah naming children. Leah's naming children very much in like this, obviously wanting acceptance from her husband, but also in a spiritual sense too. And she kind of includes the idea of her relationship with God in the naming of her children. Whereas Rachel is very much concerned about, her struggle to compete with her sister. So that's kind of, where her headspace is at, right? Okay, so let's keep on going here. We're going to get into the next one here. Let's see. We're going to go through 7 and 8. All right. Then Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. Rachel named him Naphtali, for she said, I have struggled hard with my sister and I'm winning. All right, so why does she think she's winning? So first of all, let's talk about Naphtali. It means to wrestle. So this is basically her struggle against her sister, while her sister's just struggling to get her husband to love her. So at this point, since she has 2 sons through Bilhah, she is now seeing the situation as I'm now giving I no longer have the shame of not having children, even though she's not exactly the one actually having the kids. And she also has Jacob's love. So she has both of these things. Maybe Leah was able to kind of hold it over Rachel's head, like, I'm giving him kids and you're not. And that was frustrating Rachel. And now she's able to kind of fight back and say, aha, here, I have kids now and I have my husband's love. You don't have that. So you can see the kind of nastiness between these two sisters and how they're really, struggling with this. So it's pretty rough, right? And we got Jacob kind of caught in between here, and we'll see some of that here. So let's go ahead and see what is going on with Leah. We're going to go through 9 and to 11. So let's jump over there. All right. Meanwhile, Leah realized that she wasn't getting pregnant anymore, so she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Soon Zilpah presented him with a son. Leah named him Gad, for she said, "How fortunate I am." Then Zilpah gave Jacob a second son, and Leah named him Asher, for she said, "What joy is mine! Now the other women will celebrate with me." I actually read all the way to 13, so we get these two kids out of the way. So now Leah is offering this a servant as kind of a secondary, wife, to produce more children for her. So Jacob is, I don't know how you want to think about the situation, but Jacob's really caught in between this, kind of nasty situation, and he's just being, kind of used here. So, yeah, let's see here. So let's talk about the names here. We have Gad as Jacob's seventh son. Let's see here. It means trope or good fortune, right? So we got good fortune here. And this actually comes from, I believe, it's actually a name of a pagan god. So you can kind of see, that background that this side of the family has with that pagan culture. This is the pagan culture that Abraham was called out of to follow the one true God. And so his family back here is still following these gods. But so we've got that good fortune, and then we have Asher, and that just means happy, right? So Leah is feeling great. She's given even more sons, so she's probably thinking on her side of this whole little argument or competition is like, well, okay, maybe you have his love, but you've only given him 2 sons. I've given him what is it 4, 5, 6 at this point. So that's and using kind of the same trick as Rachel. So that's what's going on right here. Let's get into this next section. It's gonna be 14 through 18. We're just gonna see this drama play out even more. So let's jump into it that right now. Oh, here we go. Reminds me of the competitive nastiness of Cinderella's 2 stepsisters. Ooh, I like that comparison. Because I would definitely see it that way. Could you imagine being stuck in between something like that? Because that's pretty crazy. Here, let's see this picture kind of open up a little bit more on that subject in general. All right. Starting from 14. One day during the wheat harvest, Reuben found some mandrakes growing in a field and brought them to his mother, Leah. Just so you guys know, mandrakes were seen as like an aphrodisiac, something to help, get you pregnant if you're struggling to get pregnant. All right, back to the reading. Rachel begged Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But Leah angrily replied, "Wasn't it enough that you stole my husband? Now will you steal my son's mandrakes too?" Rachel answered, "I will let Jacob sleep with you tonight if you give me some of the mandrakes." Okay, I'm just going to keep reading here. So that evening, as Jacob was coming home from the fields, Leah went out to meet him. "You must come and sleep with me tonight," she said. "I have paid for you with some mandrakes that my son found." So that night, he slept with Leah. So I'm going to stop right there. So these are sisters, right? And this is the life that they're living right now. So Jacob comes home to this, hey, I've bought you with some mandrakes. I get the timeshare tonight. What a crazy situation. So the interesting thing here is that Rachel really wants to have a kid of her own, because she still technically hasn't directly had her own child. She's only had them through Bilhah, her servant. So there's still some, feeling of, hey, I'm not doing enough. I'm not as good as my sister here because I haven't directly been able to give birth. So, but maybe with these mandrakes, I could through that. So she's willing to give her time with Jacob over to her sister in the hopes that she could still become pregnant. So this is still a big issue on her mind. It's not like, just because she brought Bilhah into the situation that it fixed her emotions or feelings on this. And so it's just something so human about it. It doesn't sound fun, right? Probably Jacob, you spend all day, he's out there with, he's not tilling a field. From what we understand, he's out there with the animals, herding them around. A long day of work, sun up, sundown, comes home to the rivalry between his two wives. One which he loves, one he doesn't really care for too much, but has to, be a husband to both of them, right? Because that's what he's agreed to do. So this is pretty funny. So let's see here. Let's see what actually happens from the situation. It's actually pretty funny. So let's or sad, I guess I'll let you guys decide that. All right, let's jump into the next section here. All right, so that night he slept with Leah, and God answered Leah's prayers. She became pregnant again and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. She named him Ishkar, for she said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband as a wife. Then Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob. She named him Zebulun, for she said, God has given me a good reward. Now my husband will treat me with respect, for I have given him 6 sons. Later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Okay, wow. Can you get mandrakes from Whole Foods? I don't know if you can. I don't know where you would find mandrakes from. That would be an interesting hunt. Like, I don't even know what they look like. Wilson, we're gonna have to pull up a picture of that later. All right, so all I can think of are the mandrakes from Harry Potter. I'm pretty sure those are not what we're talking about here. I guess not much sleeping was had. Yeah, but I don't think Jacob was getting a lot of rest. He was working all day for someone who was taking advantage of him for the most part, and coming home to this. So, yeah, wow, pretty interesting. All right, so Rachel's whole plan here in doing this was that she wanted to get pregnant. But once again, we see that God is still you basically taking care of Leah. Like there's something about Leah's situation, how she's not loved by her husband, that has garnered sympathy from God, and God is specifically, giving her children as kind of a way of taking care of her, right? God hears her, God sees her. Same with Hagar, when Hagar was being mistreated. It's not right that Jacob is treating her this way. It also wasn't right that Jacob got tricked into marrying her. It's also not right. There's a lot of stuff that's not right here, right? And so God is working with a mess right here. But you see, all of these kids are starting to be produced out of the situation. God didn't need, Jacob to be married to 2 women and then for 2 servant girls to be brought into the situation to give him 12 sons. God didn't need that for that to happen. But God is using the mess that is, these people's lives to bring about, his full plan and what he has envisioned for, his people and the Israelites with the 12 tribes and everything, which are going to need a lot of kids at that point for that. So let's see here. Get so much sleeping. Looks like a screaming baby plant. Oh yeah, that's from Harry Potter. I recently brought home a mandrake. Is it really like it does look like that? Interesting. All right. Yeah, we'll have to look that up. Okay, so we'll do that at the end. We'll do that when we go back to Earth. Okay, so Rachel still is getting frustrated with not having kids, and Leah's just now having even more. So Leah got the timeshare and she's getting the kids. So yeah, dang, poor Rachel. Okay, well, let's go ahead and continue. You know what? Let's look at some of these names. We have some more names. They're going to have some meanings to them. We got Zebulun here. It means dwelling. Let's see. I got a note right here. This is not my words. This is from a study on this. In the pain of her heart, she still waited for her husband to truly love her and live with her. And she hoped to the sheer quality of sons would win his heart to her. So she's still trying to win Jacob's heart, right? Leah didn't ask for this situation either. She's not the bad guy here. Let's see here. And then we have Dinah. Actually, we should have another one. Iskar. Iskar means reward. Okay. So Leah saw this son as a reward from God. Yeah. And then Dinah. So this is now a daughter, right? So here we go. We have all of these boys, and finally we have a girl here. So this is not one of those situations where the girls aren't being named like we see at the beginning of Genesis, or when we go through a lot of the, succession, so-and-so begot so-and-so. It's tend to focus on the males with that, because that's kind of how the succession worked. Even though it's not listing females, like it doesn't list any females from Adam and Eve, doesn't mean they didn't have daughters. They could have easily had daughters before they had sons. So it just wasn't a focus on listing all of those out, because that wasn't the purpose of that part of the text, right? The text is trying to be to not have to write any more than it has to make the point of the story, and uses repetition when it really wants you to focus in on something. So yeah, but we see here in this situation, we're getting a list of both males and females. So we have one daughter in this situation now. So yeah, and that's actually going to be important later on in the story. There'll be even more drama. There's even more drama, guys. But that'll happen in a later chapter. So finishing out this drama, let's go ahead and continue with where we left off here. So Leah's now stacking up a lot of sons, still hoping for at least her husband's love or respect, right? So let's jump into a little bit more here. All right. So here we're going to pick up in verse 22. It says this, and this is really interesting. Then God remembered Rachel's plight and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. God has removed my disgrace, she said, and she named him Joseph. Or she said, may the Lord add yet another son to my family. Okay, so this is now the birth of Joseph, and there's going to be some wonderful story revolving around him later on as well. But now he's just a baby. And what's kind of interesting about this is, as then God remembered. And this is not the first time this verbiage is used in the Bible. If you remember back with Noah, it starts describing the events of the flood. When you really start thinking about what it's describing, how it's describing it, it's extremely catastrophic. The way that a very violent event. It wasn't just waters coming up. The flood was extremely violent. It goes into all those details. And then it said that he remembered Noah. And then it kind of switches to the focus of the waters receding, and then them being, the ark safely landing on a mountain. So it's not that like God forgot about Noah. It's not that God forgot about Rachel. It's just that now there's a shift of focus to, okay, this part of the plan now, right? And so that's kind of what it means by, and then he remembered her. So, it's just some of that Old Testament, verbiage there. And so it kind of begs the question, why did, if God always intended for Rachel to have a child, why did he, let her anguish and have her barren for so long? Well, the best that we don't know, obviously, that the text doesn't directly tell us, but we can speculate. And part of what we could speculate on is that Leah was in a really bad situation, being unloved by her husband. So God showing her favor and kind of helping her out both socially and emotionally was to give her kids, and holding off and giving Rachel any kids so that Leah could feel loved by God in that way and feel special in that way. This is speculation. Maybe that's the case. Maybe not. But, it's just kind of interesting to think about the nature of God and how he's making these decisions here. But it's interesting to see, too, that like he didn't have it out for Rachel. Rachel's not being punished for anything. It's just that God's ways are higher than our ways. ways, and he has a specific plan here. And so he now, with enough time, has basically given Rachel a son, which means that the whole time she could have just been, instead of jealous of her sister, faithfully being patient and waiting on God to answer her prayers, and to have those fulfilled, right? So there's a lot of angst and drama here that didn't need to be had, because she wasn't being patient with God, right? So, but once again, the humanness is fully on display here, and God is using that. So now she has a kid. His name is Joseph, and I'm pretty sure, may he add is basically what Joseph means. May he add. She's hoping for another kid, right? That she can personally have. And so at least the disgrace of being barren has been removed from her. Okay. So, and something to think about here too, and this isn't going to come up in this chapter, but in future chapters. So this is Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, and now his favorite wife has had a son. You can imagine that son might have a special place in his heart over his other sons. Is that right to do? No, you shouldn't have favorites among your kids, but this will come into play later. So, and that is why. Let's see here. Let's jump into the next part here. We're going to shift focus away from this rivalry, back to the rivalry between Laban and Jacob here. So let's go ahead and jump into that. It's going to be starting at verse 25 through verse 27. So this will be pretty interesting as well. We got two tricksters. Who's going to win out on this one? All right, let's jump into it. All right. Soon after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Please release me so I can go home to my own country. Let me take my wives and children, for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way. You certainly know how hard I have worked for you." Oh, go one more. "Please listen to me," Laban replied. "I have become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you. Tell me how much I owe you. Whatever it is, I'll pay." All right, we're at the negotiation table here. Jacob wants to go home. God did promise Jacob in a vision on his way over here that he was going to, eventually bring him back home to where his father and mother live. So here he is, now that he's had all these kids and finally has a kid with Rachel. This seems to spark something in him of remembering home. And he says, "Hey, I like to go home now." Laban doesn't really want to let him go. And so Laban is here now asking that he name a price for basically all the time that he spent, right? So he doesn't feel like he owes him anything. So anyways, they're negotiating now. Let's see how this plays out. And he also gives a reasoning here. Laban does understand that he's become very wealthy, and his wealth has increased because of Jacob, because Jacob is blessed by God. So some text or some scholars believe that maybe this is revealing that Laban used some kind of pagan divination to understand this. It wouldn't be far-fetched. Once again, Laban worships pagan gods, doesn't worship, the God of Abraham. So that could be the case, but it also kind of explain Laban's character here a little bit as essentially the villain in the story for the moment. So let's keep going. I think 29 through 34 and get into the next section here. See how this conversation plays out. All right. Jacob replied, "You know how hard I've worked for you, and how your flocks and herds have grown under my care. You had little indeed before I came, but your wealth has increased enormously. The Lord has blessed you through everything I've done. But now, what about me? When can I start providing for my own family?" All right. "What wages do you want?" Laban asked again. Jacob replied, "Don't give me anything. Just do this one thing, and I will continue to tend and watch over your flocks. Let me inspect your flocks today and remove all the sheep and goats that are speckled or spotted, along with all the black sheep. Give these to me as my wages. In the future, when you check on the animals you have given me as my wages, you'll see that I have been honest. if you find in my flock any goats without speckles or spots, or any sheep that are not black, you will know that I have stolen them from you." "All right," Laban replied, "it will be as you say." Okay, so here we go. So this is kind of an interesting conversation. It doesn't really like flow that well in the sense of like fully understanding what's happening here. So we have it starting off with Jacob is like, "Can I go home?" Right? That's all he's wanting. That's all he's asking for. He just wants to go home. Laban's like, "Hey, you know what? I should pay you for your time, right? So how about you name your price, right? And you've made me really, really wealthy, and so it's okay." Well, that's not really an answer of letting him go home. So it seems like Jacob understands that Laban's not really kind of letting him go. So he's, once again, lets him know, "Yeah, indeed, your wealth has increased because of me." He's like, "Well, tell me what you would want." He's like, "Okay, how about this then? How about I tend your flocks a while longer? And while I do that, you get all the sheep that are, and all the herd that aren't speckled, that aren't black, right? And so you get the ones that look pure, and that sort of thing, kind of the pure breeds, that sort of thing. So you get those, I get all the speckled ones, right? Like, isn't this such a good deal for you?" And so he's going to basically, say, if any of them are born speckled, then they'll belong to me, right? So this sounds really good, like as a really good deal for Laban. I mean, technically he should keep getting, a lot of flock that aren't speckled and that sort of thing, and his wealth should increase, and Jacob shouldn't actually get that much out of this. So it seems like it's going to be a really good deal for Laban. But what's revealed in the next chapter is that God came to Jacob in a vision and kind of told him how he was going to get out of this situation, and gave him instructions on essentially what to do here. So we'll see how this plays out here. Let's see. So let's go a couple verses in so we can start seeing what's done here. So a little bit of explanation because it's kind of interesting. Some breeding stuff going on here. Let's get into it. All right, so verse 35, "But that very day Laban went out and removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, or had white patches, and all the black sheep. He placed them in the care of his own sons, who took them a 3 days' journey from where Jacob was. Meanwhile, Jacob stayed and cared for the rest of Laban's flock." All right, so basically what that says is that, Laban wasn't about to just give him a whole bunch of animals. He went ahead and separated the animals that were already spotted and that sort of thing out of the flock, right? And gave them to his own sons and had them keep them a 3 days journey away so they wouldn't be intermixing with the rest of Laban's herd, which would be, pure and spotless. And so, genetics wise, if you had all the pure and spotless ones separated and they mated between one another, most of their young should be also pure and spotless and that sort of thing. So once again, Laban is hedging his bets here that he's going to get most of the animals born from the herd. So, or from the flock here. So let's see what Jacob does with this situation. An unfair situation stacked against him. But one thing that Jacob does have on his side is God. So let's see how he pulls this one off. "Then Jacob took some fresh branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and peeled off strips of bark, making white streaks on them. Then he placed these peeled branches in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, for that was where they mated. And when they mated in front of the white streaked branches, they gave birth to young that were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated those lambs from Laban's flock, and at mating time he turned the flock to face Laban's animals that were streaked or black. This is how he built his own flock instead of increasing Laban's." Okay, so before we think that there's something about the branches that are literally physically changing how the young are going to turn out, this is basically what God's instruction to him. We find out next chapter. God instructed him to do this, so God would, when he did this thing, give him these spotted animals. And so basically he's getting all the animals to turn spotted and everything. So he's not increasing Laban's herd at all, if not much at all. And so all of the new animals are essentially now belong to Jacob per the agreement he had with Laban. So let's keep reading here, because he doesn't just increase in number of those. Well, he does something else as well, which is pretty interesting. Whenever the stronger females were ready to mate, Jacob would place the peeled branches and the watering troughs in front of them. Then they would mate in front of the branches. But he didn't do this with the weaker ones. So the weaker lambs belonged to Laban, and the stronger ones were Jacob's. As a result, Jacob became very wealthy, with large flocks of sheep and goats, female and male servants, and many camels and donkeys. All right, so that's what represented wealth back in those days. And so not only is he getting most of the young, most of the new animals, he's also making sure he takes the strongest animals and has those mates in front of the branches in that way. So he gets those from the strongest ones, and the weaker ones that end up mating, he doesn't do that. So they get, so Laban does get some new animals, but, they're the weaker ones, right? So he's really setting Laban up for failure here. And keep in mind, Laban kind of really screwed him over on more than one occasion here. So both in, tricking him into working so much for him, being totally used. Jacob's being totally used by his uncle here. And of course, the whole trick with Leah, with the wedding feast. So that was, this is his way of getting back with him. But this time when he's doing a trick, it's at God's behest. God has instructed him to do this trick. So that's kind of interesting. He's now listening to God, and we'll see in the next chapter how that turns out, because surely Laban isn't going to be happy with this situation, and we'll have to see what happens next then. But we just had so that's the end of this chapter. It's a whole lot of human babies and baby animals in this one, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, I just love how this is, once again, I think a lot of Jacob's story is, a lot about kind of wrestling with God, and we'll get to that in a future chapter. But, just kind of the God using human brokenness in his life, and this principle is extrapolated to all human lives, right? I mean, God doesn't have any perfect people to work with, so he works with imperfect people who make imperfect decisions, oftentimes very sinful decisions. God still brings about his will by kind of navigating these circumstances, and it's just kind of a beautiful thing to see. So we'll get into more next time with that. But I don't know if you guys have any questions on that or want to dive into anything. We're definitely going to pull up a picture of a mandrake here. So Wilson do that for us on the way back. And we're also going to look at the Europa Clipper and see where is it at on its journey. Maybe talk a little bit about the last SpaceX flight. So with that, we're going to go back to the front of the ship so we can head back. I will see you guys there. All right. So let's head on back here. So I've got a picture up here. I'll show you guys here in a second. There's definitely a lot of pictures of people making them look like babies, but they I think it's kind of a vague one. So I think we got I found a good one here. All right, I'll show you guys that in a second. It is kind of an interesting plant here. I'm not sure where you can get those, but let's go ahead. Let's make sure we can navigate correctly. Get us back home. So we've got this. Let's see. That should work. All right, Wilson. Let's see if that should, yeah, I think that's doing it. Perfect. Okay, well, here we go. All right, so a little bit. Let's pull this up. We'll put up after we get back. Real quick, SpaceX, last time we talked about that, they had their Starship Flight 6, another test where they were going to try and catch the, I can't even think of the name of it right, but the big old engine that's used for it. It worked on the 5th flight. They had a really fast turnaround time because of it, but unfortunately something went wrong. Nothing broke from what I understand. It was just that there was a risk. Something went wrong and increased the risk of it perhaps not landing correctly. So they did had it dropped in the ocean, which is pretty amazing to see. So yeah, well, I'm sure Elon Musk will get that down pat here soon. Let's see. Let's go ahead. Yeah. Lock us in place here. All right. Okay, so with us here now, let me go ahead. Let's bring up the eyes of the solar system, and then we'll look at some mandrakes here. Let's get over there. All right. Perfect. All right, let's check in on the Europa Clipper. Exactly where it's at. So this is the satellite that's going to Europa to find out if there are any signs of life, and if the potential liquid ocean is in fact underneath its surface. It definitely seems like it should be there. So let's use a distance tool here. Europa Clipper and Earth. Let's find out how far away it is. 19 million miles, got 19.5 million miles. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see here. Let's go back. Oh no. All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. All right, I love this thing. All right, well, there's Earth, there's the Europa Clipper. 19 million miles. Slowly but sure, it's going to take a long time, guys. It's going to take a long time. It's got to get all the way over here, but it's making some progress. I mean, that's some distance right there. Hey, Wilson, it's progress for us. Okay, it's progress for us. Okay, so let's see here. I'm pretty sure this will work here. Yeah. All right, that's a mandrake, everybody. Yeah. So this is, they kind of look like they have like legs or something. I mean, there's obviously kind of the fantasy version here. Where people have, I don't think like this, I don't think is real, right? I think that's probably fake. But this is basically what we're looking at here. So that's supposed to be what Rachel was after. It didn't work for her. What worked for her was God. So, yeah. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting. So I don't know if you can grow them or, what kind of climate that they need. Oh, here's a funny one. Yeah, that's definitely fake. So there's a lot of folklore and stuff about mandrakes, which is, I'm pretty sure, where Harry Potter got it from. So, all right. Well, with that, let's see, we can go back to the bridge here. Perfect. Well, with that, that's the show today. So tomorrow we're going to pick up To the Moon, where we're playing through this really incredible story, video game story that has got me on the edge of my seat. This beautiful love story between River and I think his name's John. And just kind of, it's just interesting, like playing, like starting off at the end of someone's life and then going backwards. And you would think that would just kind of like create a bunch of spoilers for kind of what their life is, but it doesn't. There's like so much mystery and so much stuff I wanted to understand and learn about. We're having a great time with it. So if you want to join us for that, I encourage you to do that. As always, if you enjoy the show, be sure to hit that like and subscribe and that notification bell. So when the show comes live, you guys will know what's happening. And yeah, see, Dan Yoder, thanks for the ride around the solar system and the story, Captain Tom. Absolutely. And thank Wilson. Wilson has, as usual, we could not do it without him. Absolutely. Give Wilson a round of applause. We didn't blow anything up today. We didn't run into anything. So he deserves a little bit of recognition for that. So with that, we're going to hit that outro. And yeah, so be sure to check out those artists in the description. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Or we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. All right.
season. I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady. I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy. My heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive. I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady. I've lost a million times already. I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy. My heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am. I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready.